Imagine you're up in your grandfather's attic, right? You're clearing out some old dusty boxes, and suddenly you stumble across this treasure map.
Oh, a classic setup.
Right. And it looks incredibly authentic. It's got the burned edges, the, faded brown ink. It even has this massive red X right in the middle, showing exactly where the gold is buried.
But then you actually look closer at it.
Exactly. You cross-reference it with a real atlas,
Yeah.
and you realize, well, half the landmarks on this thing simply do not exist.
Yeah, the river winding through the center of the map is just completely made up.
Totally fabricated. And the mountain range in the corner. Drawn in the wrong hemisphere entirely.
So logically, your very first instinct is to just toss it straight in the recycling bin, right? I mean, it's useless.
But right before you do, someone taps you on the shoulder and says, wait, if you just ignore the fake river and you walk exactly 100 paces north from where you are standing right now anyway, you actually do find a chest of gold.
It's such a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
You've got this map that is factually incorrect in its foundational details, but somehow, practically, it is highly effective in its real-world results.
And, we generally prefer our reality to be super clean and binary. True or false.
Yeah.
Fact or fiction.
Right. But when you step into the world of historical self-help, you are very often holding that exact map.
We are navigating a landscape of advice today that is, well, it's murky, it's complicated, and it is full of contradictions.
Which brings us to our mission for this deep dive. Today, we are unpacking one of the most famous, influential, and undeniably controversial books in the entire history of personal development.
We are talking about Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
And it is the absolute definition of a complicated legacy.
It really, really is. And for our listeners joining us from all over the world today, we want to establish our approach right from the start.
Yeah, let's talk about the framework we're using.
Right. So our goal today is deep accessibility. We are specifically utilizing a B1 level intermediate English framework.
Which basically means we are going to tackle some massive psychological concepts today.
Yeah. Complex neuroscience, nuanced historical context.
But we are going to do it by breaking everything down step by step.
Exactly. We're leaving all the confusing academic jargon completely out of the conversation.
No complicated academic phrasing. When we encounter a complex mechanism, we'll explain exactly how and why it works using clear everyday analogies.
Because we are looking at a book published almost a century ago in 1937, which contains this wild mix of timeless, brilliant tools sitting right next to entirely fabricated concepts.
So to understand how those brilliant tools ended up mixed with, fabricated history, we have to pull the camera all the way back.
Yeah, before we can analyze the specific methods this book tells you to use, we really have to understand the environment it was born into.
Because context dictates meaning, right?
Absolutely. And the context of 1937 is essential here.
Let's paint that picture for everyone. And 1937 is right in the brutal heart of the Great Depression.
Yeah. The economic reality in the United States, and, well, reverberating around the globe, really, was catastrophic.
We are not just talking about a mild recession here.
No.
Yeah.
We are talking about absolute systemic collapse. Unemployment was hovering around 20%.
20%, that's just staggering.
And people had lost their life savings literally overnight because the banks ran out of money and just closed their doors.
Imagine waking up and your bank is just gone.
Right. Families were losing homes they had lived in for generations. The psychological atmosphere of the country was just saturated with desperation, fear, and this profound sense of helplessness.
People were physically standing in bread lines for hours just to get soup to feed their children.
And into this incredibly dark, scarce environment, Napoleon Hill drops a book with an outrageously bold premise.
A completely wild premise for the time.
He tells a starving population that wealth, success, and recovery do not begin with external resources.
Right, he says they begin entirely with a state of mind.
Which sounds almost insulting when you frame it that way.
It really does.
Yeah.
I mean, telling someone who is locked out of the banking system to just think differently seems, well, absurd.
Yet, the book resonated on an unprecedented scale. I mean, it has sold over 100 million copies globally.
Over 100 million. It's still one of the highest selling books in human history.
Continuously finding new audiences decade after decade.
But we have to talk about why it sold so well. Because the sheer volume of those sales was supercharged by the book's origin story.
Oh, the legendary origin story.
Yeah. Hill didn't just write a list of his personal opinions. He packaged the book with his massive narrative. He claimed that the methodologies inside were the result of a grueling 20-year research project.
A project that supposedly involved interviewing 500 of the most successful, powerful individuals in American history.
He presented himself as this, journalist of success, right?
Huh?
Compiling the shared secrets of giants like Thomas Edison
The pioneer of the electric age, yeah.
and Henry Ford, the architect of modern manufacturing.
But the absolute crown jewel of this origin myth was his relationship with Andrew Carnegie.
Andrew Carnegie, who was a steel magnate and literally one of the wealthiest human beings to ever live.
Right. And according to Hill, Carnegie invited him to his massive estate, sat him down, and personally commissioned him to spend 2 decades uncovering the secret formula of the ultra-rich.
All to share it with the common man.
It is a phenomenal marketing hook.
Oh, it's brilliant marketing. You aren't just buying a book. You feel like you're buying the whispered secrets of billionaires.
But, and this is a massive but, modern historical investigation has completely dismantled this foundational narrative.
This is where we go back to the fake river on the map.
Exactly. Historians and biographers have dug through the archives looking for visitor logs, diaries, correspondence from Carnegie, Edison, and Ford.
And the reality they found is pretty staggering. There is virtually no independent evidence that most of these deep philosophical meetings ever even took place.
0. Specifically, that legendary multi-day masterclass with Andrew Carnegie, the supposed catalyst for the entire 20-year endeavor, has absolutely no historical footprint.
Carnegie's biographers have found 0 record of Hill ever visiting the estate.
In fact, during the period Hill claimed to be conducting this elite research, he was actually involved in a series of failed business ventures and just working various writing jobs.
Wow. Discovering that feels like a massive betrayal of trust for the reader, doesn't it?
It definitely does. It forces a really critical question. If the foundation is built on a fabricated story, how do we treat the knowledge built on top of it?
Do we just discard the entire philosophy?
Well, if we return to your opening analogy, we don't throw away the map just because the cartographer lied about the river.
Right. The gold might still be there.
Exactly. But we must proceed with profound caution.
And reading with caution means we have to apply a critical lens to the author's worldview. We need to neutrally examine the historical biases that are woven deeply into the text.
Because Hill was writing from a very specific demographic position. He was a white American man in the 1930s.
Right. And his primary audience consisted of other men of similar standing who already possessed basic societal privileges, mobility, and access to capital.
And that demographic reality creates what statisticians and historians call survival bias.
We should definitely explain survival bias clearly for our listeners.
Let's use that famous example from the military. During World War II, the military wanted to add armor to their bomber planes to protect them from enemy fire.
Okay, makes sense.
So they looked at the planes returning from missions, noted exactly where all the bullet holes were on the fuselage, and decided to put extra armor in those heavily damaged areas.
Which sounds perfectly logical at first glance. Put armor where the planes are getting hit.
Until a mathematician named Abraham Wald pointed out a massive flaw in their logic.
What was the flaw?
The military was only looking at the planes that survived. The bullet holes on the returning planes showed exactly where a plane could take damage and still manage to fly home.
Oh, wow. So they were completely ignoring the planes that got shot down and never returned.
Exactly. The extra armor actually needed to go where the returning planes had no bullet holes, because a hit in those unseen areas meant total destruction.
That perfectly illustrates the problem with Hill's methodology, doesn't it? Even if he had actually interviewed those 500 men.
Yes. He is only looking at the returning planes. He is analyzing the men who survived the brutal economic system and succeeded.
He is completely ignoring the thousands of people who possess the exact same mindset, the exact same work ethic, and the exact same burning desire.
But were shot down by systemic barriers, lack of access to banking, or societal discrimination.
Because of that survival bias, Hill presents this reality where your thoughts are the only variable that matters.
Right. If you succeed, it's because you thought correctly. If you fail, it's because your mind wasn't calibrated right.
And when we adapt this book for the modern world, we really have to acknowledge that external realities matter deeply.
Merely changing your thoughts does not instantly dissolve systemic inequality.
That is the essential disclaimer we have to carry with us today. The tools in this book are incredibly potent, but they operate within the bounds of reality, not magic.
So, with that disclaimer in place, let's start extracting the actual goal.
Let's do it. Let's look at the first major concept that has allowed this book to survive for nearly a century.
Hill argues that all achievement begins with a very specific, carefully defined emotion.
Which is entirely counterintuitive to how we normally approach goals.
Right.
Usually, we assume achievement begins with acquiring resources or developing a technical skill.
But Hill insists the starting line is internal. He calls it a burning desire.
And we really need to clearly separate a burning desire from what most people experience, which is just a simple wish.
Yeah, those are two very different things in Hill's framework.
Because if I walk down the street right now and ask 10 people if they want to be wealthy, healthy, and fluent in a second language, all 10 will definitely say yes.
Of course. But Hill categorizes those responses as passive wishes. And a wish is fundamentally weak. Psychologically, a wish is just a pleasant daydream. It gives you this tiny spike of dopamine without requiring any actual effort on your part.
So it feels good to think about, but nothing changes.
Right. And a wish allows for endless excuses. You can wish for a better job while sitting on the couch watching television all weekend.
A burning desire is an entirely different creature. It is specific, it is measurable, and the most critical component is that it eliminates all alternatives.
When Hill says there are no alternatives, he means you are intentionally burning the bridges behind you.
It is plan A, and there is no plan B.
Exactly. To qualify as a burning desire under his framework, your goal must possess 3 strict parameters.
What are they?
You need an exact quantified target, a specific deadline, and a concrete plan of action that you begin executing immediately, whether you feel fully prepared or not.
Whether you feel prepared or not, that's huge.
To ground this in a memorable image, Hill uses the story of Thomas Edison.
Now, unlike the Carnegie meetings, the historical record actually does back up Edison's incredible persistence.
Right. It does. When Edison was trying to invent the incandescent light bulb, he didn't just fail a few times. He systematically tested thousands of different materials for the filament.
Stuff like bamboo, cotton, various metals.
Yeah. And he faced somewhere around 10,000 failed attempts.
10,000. Let's truly pause and imagine the psychological weight of that.
It's hard to even comprehend. Imagine failing at a highly complex, expensive project day after day, week after week, for years.
The social pressure, the financial drain, the internal doubt. Most rational human beings would conclude that the project is physically impossible after, I don't know, a few hundred failures.
But Edison's framing of those failures was completely different. He famously noted that he hadn't failed 10,000 times. He had simply successfully found 10,000 ways that did not work.
He never internalized the identity of a failure.
Never. His burning desire to solve the problem simply did not allow him to stop. Stopping, for him, was literally not an option on the table.
That level of relentless drive is awe-inspiring, for sure, but it also invites a very natural skepticism. It sounds almost superhuman.
It does sound extreme.
I have to admit, this is where I heavily question the practical application of the book. It sounds incredibly inspiring to read about Edison's unyielding fire. But can a normal person actually force a burning desire into existence?
That's the big question.
Because to me, it feels like commanding someone to just fall deeply in love with a stranger by Tuesday. You can't just flip a neurological switch and decide to be intensely passionate about something.
We can't fake it, yeah.
You either feel that fire or you don't. How can a self-help book instruct you to simply have a burning desire?
That is a phenomenal critique because it highlights the exact trap of modern toxic productivity culture.
Right, this idea that you just need to hustle harder or manufacture fake enthusiasm.
Exactly. But if we read Hill's methodology closely, he is not actually suggesting you invent passion out of thin air. He is advocating for a process of internal excavation.
Excavation,
Yeah.
like digging something up out of the dirt.
Precisely. Hill believes that most people already have deep, profound desires, but those desires are buried.
Buried under what?
Under layers of societal expectation, fear of failure, and, practical compromises. We tell ourselves things like, I can't be an artist, I need a safe corporate job, or I'm way too old to learn a new language.
Oh, I see.
Hill's exercise of defining the specific number, date, and plan is a way of clearing away all that dirt. You find the ember of what you already want, and you focus all of your conscious attention on it until it becomes a fire.
So it's about directing existing energy, not fabricating it from scratch.
Exactly.
Okay, that reframing makes it much more accessible. It's about giving yourself permission to focus intensely on the thing you've been putting off.
let's apply this directly to the listener's immediate experience. You are listening to this deep dive right now, likely to improve your English comprehension.
Right. And if your approach is based on a passive wish, just thinking, I really hope my English gets better eventually, the psychological friction is too low.
Way too low. The moment you have a stressful day at work, you will skip your study session.
The moment a grammar rule becomes frustrating, you'll just switch to watching media in your native language. A wish crumbles under the slightest pressure.
But if we upgrade that wish to a burning desire using Hill's strict parameters, the entire landscape changes.
You don't just want to be better. You declare, I will achieve a certified B2 level of English fluency by November 15th.
And I will do this by engaging in active listening for 45 minutes during my daily commute and speaking with a language partner for 1 hour every single Saturday.
Notice the massive shift in identity there. You are no longer just hoping for a distant outcome.
You are anchoring yourself to a rigid daily process. Failure to execute the daily plan becomes a violation of your own personal standards.
That is powerful. But it leads us directly into a massive psychological wall.
The motivation wall.
Yeah. Even if you have the most brilliantly defined burning desire on January 1st, motivation is a finite resource.
It runs out.
By February, the initial excitement wears off. The alarm goes off at 6 a.m. for your study session, and you are just exhausted.
The fire starts to run out of oxygen, and this is the exact problem Hill addresses with his second major mechanism.
He realized that conscious willpower alone is not enough to sustain long-term achievement.
No, you have to recruit the deeper automatic systems of your brain, and he called this mechanism autosuggestion.
Let's dissect that term for a second. Auto means self, and suggestion means introducing an idea or belief.
So autosuggestion is the deliberate, systematic practice of feeding specific ideas into your own mind.
And Hill bases this entirely on his understanding of the subconscious mind.
Yeah, he does. He posits that the subconscious, which is the vast processing center operating right beneath our waking awareness, cannot differentiate between an actual physical event and a deeply, vividly imagined event.
See, that sounds like a massive claim. The brain really can't tell the difference between reality and imagination.
In terms of neurological response, yes. Think about it. If you vividly imagine a stressful scenario, like, say, giving a public speech to a really hostile crowd.
Oh, my hands are sweating just thinking about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your heart rate will elevate, your palms will sweat, and cortisol will literally flood your system, even though you are sitting completely alone in a quiet, safe room.
Your subconscious reacts to the internal imagery as if it is a physical threat happening right now.
Yes. So Hill is saying we can hijack that exact mechanism for positive outcomes. The subconscious operates constantly, 24 hours a day.
If you feed it systematic, emotional repetition, if you vividly imagine the successful outcome of your goal and repeat your plan with genuine feeling, the subconscious begins to accept those constructed thoughts as foundational facts.
Now, in the 1930s, this sounded vaguely mystical, like magic.
But today, we have the vocabulary of modern neuroscience to explain exactly why this works.
We do. We are talking about neuroplasticity and Hebbian learning.
Yes. The principle famously summarized as neurons that fire together wire together.
Exactly. When you think a new thought or practice a new behavior, it's kind of like walking through a dense, overgrown jungle with a machete.
The first time you try to clear a path, it is incredibly slow, painful, and difficult.
That is the initial friction of learning.
But if you walk that exact same path every single day, repeatedly cutting back the vines, the path eventually becomes a clear dirt trail.
Then it becomes a paved road. Eventually it becomes an 8-lane highway. The physical structure of your brain actually changes.
The neural pathways associated with your goal become thicker, faster, and much more efficient.
And this is also deeply connected to another neurological function called the reticular activating system.
The RAS.
The RAS. It's a bundle of nerves at our brainstem that acts sort of like a bouncer at a busy nightclub.
A bouncer? How does that work?
Well, at any given second, there are millions of pieces of sensory data hitting your eyes and ears. If your brain consciously processed all of it, you would just go insane.
That'd be total sensory overload.
So the RAS, the bouncer, filters out 99% of it, only letting through the information that it deems important.
And how does it know what is actually important?
By what you consciously focus on. This is why when you decide to buy, say, a specific model of a red car, suddenly you see that exact red car everywhere you go.
Well, I've had that happen.
Right. The cars didn't magically appear in your town. They were always there. But your RAS was previously filtering them out as irrelevant noise.
Once you told your brain, this red car is important to me, the filter shifted and you started noticing them.
That completely demystifies the whole concept of autosuggestion.
It really does. By practicing autosuggestion, repeatedly stating your goals and vividly visualizing them, you are literally programming your reticular activating system to scan your environment for opportunities, resources, and people that match your goal.
This connects beautifully to modern behavioral psychology, particularly the work of James Clear in Atomic Habits.
Oh, great book.
Clear argues that true behavior change isn't about chasing results, it's about changing your identity. Every time you perform an action aligned with your goal, you are casting a vote for the person you want to become.
So every morning you spend 30 minutes wrestling with English grammar. You weren't just memorizing rules. You were casting a neurological vote for the identity. I am a dedicated, fluent English speaker.
And Hill was essentially outlining this exact same process nearly a century ago, just using the language of his era.
He was instructing readers to forcefully tell their brain who they are until the brain's physical structure aligns with the claim.
However, we must stop right here to construct a very, very firm boundary.
Yes, this is a crucial point.
Over the decades since its publication, Hill's highly practical mechanism of autosuggestion was heavily distorted by other writers and thinkers.
It slowly mutated into what pop culture now refers to as the law of attraction.
We definitely need to talk about this.
The law of attraction is the concept popularized by books like The Secret. It is this belief that your thoughts emit some sort of cosmic magnetic frequency out into the universe.
The idea being that if you just sit in your living room and think really, really hard about $1 million, the universe will magically arrange for a duffel bag of cash to arrive on your doorstep.
And our sources are incredibly explicit on this point. That is unscientific, magical thinking.
It is absolutely not what autosuggestion is, and honestly, it's a dangerous misinterpretation.
The universe does not care about your thoughts. Your brain cares about your thoughts.
The mechanism is entirely internal and behavioral, not cosmic.
Changing your focus changes your behavior, which changes what you notice in your environment, which changes the actions you take. It is a highly practical chain of events.
But even understanding the science behind it, I still struggle with the daily reality of autosuggestion.
What do you mean?
I want to push back a little on the actual experience of doing it. Let's say you are currently unemployed, your bank account is overdrawn, and you are extremely stressed.
Okay, tough situation.
And Hill tells you to stand in front of the mirror, look yourself in the eye, and repeatedly state, I am a successful, wealthy individual.
It creates massive cognitive dissonance.
Exactly. Isn't that just lying to yourself? Your conscious brain knows it's a lie. Your empty fridge knows it's a lie.
Doesn't repeating a positive affirmation that drastically contradicts your reality just make you feel more depressed and crazy?
That is the exact trap of empty positive affirmations. If you merely parrot words without belief, your brain will reject them completely as a ridiculous fantasy.
But Hill actually anticipates this critique. He explicitly states that repeating words without profound emotion and a concrete action plan is entirely useless.
So the action plan is the bridge between the lie and the reality.
Precisely. You don't just say, I'm a millionaire, while doing absolutely nothing.
You say, I am moving toward financial stability by applying for these 5 specific jobs today and by learning this new skill for an hour tonight.
When the autosuggestion is paired with immediate, undeniable action, it stops feeling like a lie and starts feeling like an itinerary.
The autosuggestion is the engine that generates the fuel for the hard work. It is never a replacement for the work itself.
I love that distinction. It is the engine, not the vehicle.
Yeah.
But even with a burning desire and a perfectly tuned internal engine, you run into the next major limitation.
Which is?
A single human being only has 24 hours in a day. A single brain only has so much computing power, so much creativity, and so much resilience.
Yes. Which brings us to the third massive pillar of Hill's philosophy.
He recognized that isolated brilliance is rarely enough to build lasting success.
Eventually, your internal engine will stall, or you will encounter a problem your specific brain just cannot solve on its own.
And this necessitates what he called the mastermind principle.
Now, the word mastermind usually makes us think of, like, a villain in a spy movie plotting world domination in a secret volcano base.
Right. But in this context, it is arguably the most practical and vital concept in the entire book.
Hill defines a mastermind as a third mind. He theorized that when two or more people coordinate their knowledge and effort in a spirit of perfect harmony toward a definite purpose, they don't just add their intelligence together.
They multiply it.
They create this invisible, intangible third mind that is vastly more capable than the sum of its individual parts.
In modern business and sociology, we use different terminology for this today. We call it synergy, collective intelligence, or peer-to-peer learning.
It is the phenomenon where 1 + 1 suddenly equals 3.
And he'll base this concept largely on his observations, whether direct or indirect, of Andrew Carnegie.
Remember, Carnegie built a globally dominant steel empire. But Carnegie himself was not a metallurgist.
He's not a chemist either.
He didn't know the deep engineering mechanics of building a blast furnace.
Which is mind-blowing when you really think about it. The king of steel didn't actually know the exact science of steel.
Because his actual genius was in building the mastermind. Carnegie's skill was identifying brilliant chemists, exceptional engineers, and ruthless logistics experts, bringing them all into a room and aligning their diverse talents toward a singular goal.
He managed the collective intelligence.
This principle translates down to a very famous personal development maxim that our source highlights: the rule of 5.
Oh, the rule of 5.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
You average out their income, their ambition, their health habits, and even their vocabulary.
And this isn't just a poetic metaphor. It is solidly grounded in evolutionary biology and behavioral mirroring.
As social primates, humans are heavily wired for tribal cohesion. We possess mirror neurons in our brains that subconsciously cause us to mimic the posture, speech patterns, and emotional states of the people around us.
Let's look at how this plays out in a normal daily environment. Imagine you work in an office where the 5 closest colleagues around your desk are deeply cynical.
They spend their lunch breaks complaining about management, mocking anyone who tries to learn a new skill, constantly repeating that trying to get ahead is just a waste of time.
Even if you begin as a highly optimistic, driven person, that environment acts as a slow-acting psychological toxin.
Exactly. Day after day, your mirror neurons are adapting to their emotional frequency just to maintain social harmony. Their pessimism slowly becomes your invisible ceiling.
You won't apply for the promotion, not because you aren't capable, but because the group consensus has implicitly forbidden it.
Conversely, if you place yourself in a room with 5 people who are relentlessly curious, who read constantly, and who discuss ideas rather than complaining about circumstances, your baseline elevates.
Their ambition literally pulls you upward. You naturally adapt to their standard of excellence.
Okay, but I have to bring us back to reality again for a second.
Let's hear it.
The rule of 5 sounds great if you are an Ivy League graduate living in a major city with endless networking opportunities. But what if you aren't?
Right. What if you live in an isolated rural town? What if you are working 2 physically demanding minimum wage jobs just to keep the lights on?
It's the survival bias rearing its head again.
Precisely. You can't just wave a magic wand and decide to hang out with venture capitalists and CEOs.
Furthermore, our closest connections are often our family members. You cannot, and honestly should not, simply fire your parents or your siblings just because they don't share your entrepreneurial mindset.
The idea that we have total, friction-free control over our social environment ignores the messy reality of human obligation and economic limits.
That is a crucial counterweight to Hill's sometimes overly simplistic advice. We really have to adapt the principle for the real world.
Adapting it means you don't need to completely abandon your current community to build a mastermind.
You don't need a boardroom full of millionaires. You need to construct what we might call a mini mastermind.
How does someone do that with limited resources?
It starts with identifying just one new source of positive influence. If you cannot find a physical mentor in your town, a mastermind can be built digitally.
Or even through literature, right?
Exactly. Reading the biography of someone you admire is a form of engaging with their mind. But ideally, it means finding one peer who shares your growth trajectory.
Let's bring this back to our listener striving to master B1 English. If you are studying alone in your bedroom, wrestling with verb conjugations in silence, the friction is immense.
The temptation to quit is huge.
But if you seek out just one language exchange partner online, someone living halfway across the world who has an equally burning desire to improve their English, you have successfully formed a 2-person mastermind.
The dynamic changes instantly. You pool your resources, you share a podcast you found helpful, they explain a grammar rule you were struggling with.
Most importantly, you provide emotional accountability. When one of you wants to quit, the other provides the energy to keep going.
That single intentional connection can shatter the invisible ceiling of your physical environment.
It's about introducing intentional upward pulling gravity into your life to counteract the downward pull of your default environment.
Upward pulling gravity, exactly.
So we have thoroughly mapped out the three massive theoretical pillars of Hill's philosophy. We know we need to ignite a specific burning desire. We know we need to build an internal engine using autosuggestion to rewire our brain's filter.
And we know we must seek out a mastermind to multiply our efforts.
The theories are profound, but theory without application is totally useless.
Which is why our source material has distilled these broad concepts into 3 highly actionable, practical tools. This is how we take a 1937 philosophy and operationalize it for your life today.
It's time to get your hands dirty. If you were listening to this, I challenge you to actually pause, grab a piece of paper, and execute the first tool, the desire formula.
This is the process of mutating your passive wish into the burning desire we discussed earlier.
The formula requires you to write down 3 distinct sentences. Step 1, define your exact target. Do not write, I want to be healthier. Write, I will be able to run 5 kilometers without stopping.
Step 2, assign a non-negotiable deadline. I will achieve this by Sunday, October 12th.
Step 3 is the most painful, but honestly the most important. You must write down exactly what you intend to give in return for this goal.
Success is a transaction. You have to pay for it with time, comfort, or money. Right? I will achieve this by sacrificing 30 minutes of television every evening to train, regardless of the weather.
Once it is written, you apply the autosuggestion. You read this statement out loud with genuine emotional commitment, once in the morning to set your brain's filter for the day, and once at night to allow your subconscious to process it while you sleep.
And I will warn you right now, as someone who has tried this, reading a statement out loud to yourself feels incredibly awkward.
You will feel so silly.
But that uncomfortable feeling is actually cognitive dissonance. It feels uncomfortable because the formula is actively stripping away your excuses.
It forces absolute, terrifying commitment. You are staring directly at what you must do, and there's nowhere left to hide.
The second tool addresses your external environment. We call it the environment audit.
Take a new piece of paper and write down the names of the 5 people you interact with the most. This could include your spouse, your best friend, your manager, or a coworker.
Look at that list and ask yourself a brutally honest question. Are the mindsets and habits of these 5 individuals pulling me closer to the person I want to be, or are they holding me back?
This audit requires nuance, though. If you realize a close friend is a negative influence, it doesn't mean you text them and brutally end the friendship right then and there.
No, it simply means you become consciously aware of the dynamic. You put up an internal boundary. You realize, I can enjoy spending time with this person, but I cannot let their pessimism regarding my career infect my own mindset.
And it serves as a red flag. If your audit reveals that 4 out of 5 people on your list are actively dragging you down, that is an immediate signal that you must urgently seek out a new mastermind connection to balance the scales.
The final practical tool is perhaps the most difficult to master emotionally. It is called failure analysis.
We talked about Edison earlier. The reason Edison could fail 10,000 times is because of how he processed failure.
Biologically, humans are terrified of failure. In our ancient tribal days, failing in front of the group could mean being cast out of the tribe, which meant certain death.
So our brains treat failure as a literal mortal threat. Our ego steps in and says, if this project failed, it means I am a failure as a human being.
Failure analysis requires you to forcefully separate your identity from the outcome. You must learn to treat failure not as a tragedy, but as neutral scientific data.
Let's say you take an English proficiency exam and you fail. The ego reaction is to cry, say, I am terrible at languages, and quit forever.
The failure analysis reaction is to sit down, look at the test scores with cold detachment, and ask, exactly which mechanism failed?
Did I fail the vocabulary section? Yes. Why? Because I didn't use flashcards. Great.
The failure is no longer a life sentence. It is simply a diagnostic report, showing you exactly where you need to adjust your action plan for the next attempt. You take the data, discard the emotion, and move forward.
The desire formula, the environment audit, and failure analysis. These 3 tools are undeniably potent. They are a masterclass in behavioral design.
If you apply them relentlessly, you will almost certainly become more productive and achieve your targets.
However, before we conclude this deep dive, we have an intellectual obligation to zoom out.
We really do.
We have spent the last 50 minutes discussing the highly effective engine that Napoleon Hill built. but we must turn our critical attention to the GPS coordinates he programmed into that engine.
We need to look at the ultimate destination he's pointing us toward.
We have to address the elephant in the room. The book is literally titled Think and Grow, AICH. Not Think and Grow Happy or Think and Grow Fulfilled.
Throughout the entire text, Hill explicitly and implicitly equates financial wealth, capitalist achievement, and the accumulation of power with the ultimate pinnacle of human existence.
He creates a framework where the size of your bank account is the ultimate metric of a life well lived.
And this is exactly where modern psychology and philosophy offer a massive, vital critique of the book's foundational premise.
Our research sources bring in 3 heavyweight modern thinkers to dismantle this obsession with money. First is Mark Manson, author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fund.
Manson points out a profound psychological trap in constantly striving for more wealth. He argues that when your burning desire is solely focused on acquiring more money, you are forcing yourself to live in a perpetual state of lack.
You are constantly reminding your subconscious of what you do not have. This creates what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill.
You hit your goal of making $50,000, you feel a brief dopamine rush, and immediately your brain resets and demands $100,000.
The finish line constantly moves, ensuring you are never actually satisfied. It is a recipe for chronic anxiety.
Next, we look at Viktor Frankl. Frankl was a brilliant psychiatrist who survived the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust concentration camps.
He wrote the seminal book, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl's psychological framework, known as logotherapy, posits that the primary human drive is not the pursuit of pleasure or wealth, but the pursuit of meaning.
Frankl observed that the prisoners who found a way to survive the camps were often not the physically strongest, but those who held on to a deep sense of meaning.
Whether that was the hope of reuniting with a loved one, or an unfinished piece of work they felt uniquely called to complete.
Frankl argues that meaning is found in taking responsibility, in enduring unavoidable suffering with dignity, and in deep human connection.
And crucially, extreme wealth cannot purchase meaning. In fact, an obsession with wealth often isolates you from the very relationships that generate meaning.
We see this constantly in modern society. A person uses Hill's exact tools. They build the mastermind, they use autosuggestion, they grind for 20 years, and they hit the exact financial number on their desire formula paper.
And they wake up the next morning profoundly, deeply depressed. They experience what Frankl called the existential vacuum. They achieved the goal, but the goal was empty.
Finally, we look at Oliver Burkeman, who writes about time management and the reality of human finitude.
Burkeman reminds us that our time on Earth is absurdly short, roughly 4,000 weeks. Treating every hour of that finite time as a tool for endless productivity and wealth accumulation strips the joy out of simply existing.
If you spend your entire life using autosuggestion to grind toward a future financial goal, you are entirely absent from the present moment. You miss the actual experience of living.
I love the metaphor we discussed earlier to encapsulate this critique. Using Hill's methods to chase pure wealth is like spending a decade perfectly calibrating the engine of a high-performance race car.
Tuning every valve and polishing every gear.
Only to realize your GPS was set to drive you into the middle of a barren desert. The machine works flawlessly, but the destination is completely miserable.
That is the ultimate paradox of Think and Grow Rich. The psychological tools are brilliant, but the capitalist destination it assumes you want may be entirely misaligned with human flourishing.
So how do we synthesize all of this? We have covered a vast terrain today.
We really have. We examined the desperate 1937 context and the completely fabricated historical interviews.
We unpacked the psychological mechanic of burning desire, the neurological reality of autosuggestion, and the tribal biology behind the mastermind.
And we just confronted the dangerous emptiness of obsessing purely over money.
When you strip away the fake history, the survival bias, and the narrow definition of success, you are left with one enduring, undeniable truth that makes this book worth reading.
What is that core truth?
It is the profound realization that the narrative you construct about yourself and your deep convictions about what is possible shape your trajectory far more than your initial external circumstances.
Not because your thoughts magically manipulate the cosmos, but because your beliefs dictate what your brain notices in your environment.
Your beliefs dictate the caliber of the people you surround yourself with.
And most importantly, your beliefs dictate your resilience. They decide whether you stop after the first failure or keep pushing through the 10,000th.
The map may have fake rivers and a dubious origin story, but if the map inspires you to walk out of the dark woods and keeps you moving forward through difficult terrain, it still holds immense value.
Precisely. It is a tool, and like any tool, its value depends entirely on the wisdom of the person wielding it.
As we close this deep dive, we want to hand the tool over to you, our listener. We want to ask you the central question that this book demands of its readers. Look at the landscape of your life right now. What is the one thing you actually want to achieve?
Is it reaching a B1 level in English? Is it repairing a relationship? Is it launching a creative project?
Look at that goal, honestly. Do you have a specific target, a non-negotiable deadline, and a concrete plan? Or is it still just a passive, comfortable wish?
Because if it remains a wish, nothing will change. Today is the day you must decide if you are willing to build the fire.
And as you reflect on that challenge, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over.
We just discussed how Napoleon Hill designed this incredibly intense, effective formula of burning desire, autosuggestion, and masterminds, specifically as an engine for acquiring corporate wealth. But I want you to imagine what would happen if you hijacked his machinery.
Hijacked it. In what way?
What if you took this exact same rigorous, laser-focused methodology, but pointed the GPS toward a destination completely opposite to Hill's vision of capitalist supremacy?
What if you defined a burning desire, not for $1 million, but to attain a state of deep, unshakable inner peace?
What if you used the relentless repetition of autosuggestion to rewire your brain to become radically empathetic?
Wow.
What if you consciously built a mastermind group, not to launch a tech startup, but to master a beautiful, obscure creative art simply for the pure joy of existing?
What if you use the tools of extreme capitalism to become the kindest, most generous anchor in your local community?
That is a phenomenal reframing, using the ruthless mechanics of achievement to engineer extreme empathy and joy.
It brings us full circle. You are holding a flawed map.
Mm-hmm.
But if you understand how to read it, and if you have the courage to choose a better destination than the author intended, it might just lead you to the exact kind of goal that actually matters.
Thank you for navigating this complex terrain with us today. Keep questioning your assumptions and keep analyzing your mental maps.
We will see you on the next deep dive.